The oldest girl fell first. 14 years old, carrying a 3-year-old on her back through waist-deep snow. 8 children followed her trail of blood to a stranger's door. The blacksmith hadn't spoken to another soul in 7 years. Tonight, he'd have to speak for 9. "Please, mister." Her voice cracked. "He killed our parents. He's coming for us." Behind them, torchlight flickered through the blizzard. 2 miles out, maybe less. Silas McAllister looked at 9 frozen faces and made the only choice a decent man could make. Subscribe to our channel and follow this story to the end. Comment your city below. I want to see how far this story travels.
Chator.
The knock came at midnight. 3 weak taps against oak. Then nothing. Silas McAllister set down his hammer and listened. The forge coals glowed red behind him, throwing shadows across the cabin walls. Wind howled through gaps in the timber like something dying. He hadn't heard a knock on that door in 4 years. Hadn't wanted to. The knock came again. Weaker. He crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled the door open. The girl collapsed across his threshold. She was maybe 14, tall for her age, but thin as fence wire. Snow caked her hair white. Her dress was torn at the shoulder, and through the fabric he saw marks. Belt marks. Fresh ones layered over old ones, crisscrossed like someone had been practicing. But she wasn't alone. Behind her, arranged in the snow like a ragged army, stood 8 more children. The oldest boy was maybe 12, holding a small girl on his hip. A cluster of others huddled together, their breath pluming white in the freezing air. The smallest, a toddler wrapped in what looked like a flour sack, whimpered against a young girl's chest. 9 children, in a blizzard. At 20 below zero. The oldest girl grabbed his boot with fingers that had gone past blue into something worse. "Please, mister." Her voice came out raw. "He killed our parents. He's coming for us." Silas looked past them, into the darkness. A mile out, maybe less, torchlight bobbed through the trees. Moving fast. "Inside," he said. "All of you. Now." They came through the door like refugees from a war. The oldest boy, 12, with his father's stubborn jaw, carried a 6-year-old who'd stopped shivering, which was bad. A girl of about 11 guided 2 smaller ones by their hands, her face set in the kind of calm that only came from being terrified too long to show it anymore. Silas counted as they passed. 14-year-old girl, 12-year-old boy, 11, 10, 8, 7, 6, 5, 3, 9 children, 6 girls, 3 boys. The toddler in the flour sack started crying thin and weak. "Shut the door," the oldest girl said. She'd pulled herself up off the floor, standing now, with her hand braced against the wall. "He'll see the light." Silas kicked the door closed. The bar dropped into place with a solid thunk. "The fire," she said. "He'll see the smoke." "Can't put out the fire. You'll freeze." "We've been freezing for 3 days." She looked at him with eyes too old for 14. "We can freeze a little longer if it means he doesn't find us." The 12-year-old boy stepped forward. "Emmy, let me handle this." "Sam, sit down before you fall down." "I ain't gonna sit while some stranger—" "He's not a stranger. He's Silas McAllister." Emmy turned back to Silas. "You pulled our daddy out of the Bannock mine collapse, summer of '79. Carried him 5 miles with a broken leg when the rescue team couldn't get through." Silas remembered. A man trapped under timber screaming. Floodwater rising. He'd done what anyone would have done. "Your daddy was William Holloway." "Yes, sir, and my mama was Sarah." Emmy's voice cracked on the name. "They're dead now. Wagon accident in September. Wheel came off on flat ground where wheels don't come off." The torchlight outside was closer now. Half a mile. "Who's coming?" Silas asked. "Our uncle." Sam spat the word like poison. Cornelius Blackwood. He showed up 2 weeks after the funeral with papers saying he was our legal guardian, moved into our house, started selling off the livestock. The boy's hands clenched. Started using his belt on anyone who talked back. He wants our land, Emmy said quietly. Both homesteads, ours and the Pattersons. She gestured to 4 of the younger children who huddled together near the stove. Their parents died in the same accident. Same wagon. Cornelius says he's guardian to all of us now. Silas looked at the Patterson children. The oldest was a girl of 11 with calculating eyes. Charlotte, he'd learn later. She held a 7-year-old boy who hadn't spoken since watching his mother die, Jake. A 5-year-old girl with incongruent sunshine in her smile, Rosie. And the toddler in the flour sack, 3 years old, and too quiet, Ruth. Both families in one accident, Silas said slowly. Same accident, same day, same stretch of road. Emmy met his eyes. Our daddy was careful, Mr. McAllister. He checked that wagon every Sunday after church, checked it the morning they left. The torchlight split into two riders now. You're saying your uncle killed them. I'm saying the wheel bolts were filed. I'm saying Cornelius had papers ready 2 weeks later. I'm saying he hits the little ones when they cry and locks us in the root cellar when we don't work fast enough. Emmy's voice didn't waver. I'm saying if you send us back to him, we'll die. Maybe not tonight. Maybe not next week. But we'll die. The 3-year-old Ruth started crying louder. The sound was wrong. Too weak. A baby that age should be able to scream the roof down. How long since she ate? Silas asked. 2 days. Cornelius said we didn't earn supper. Sam's jaw worked. Said Ruth was too young to be useful anyway. Something cold settled in Silas's chest, a feeling he hadn't had since the war. You, he said to Emmy, take the young ones to the back room. There's blankets on the bed. Pile them together for warmth. The riders? I'll handle the riders. Emmy hesitated. Every instinct in her body was screaming to protect her siblings, to stay between them and any threat. Silas recognized that look. He'd worn it himself once. You pulled my daddy from that mine, she said finally. He talked about you every year on the anniversary. Said you were the only man he'd trust with his life. Then trust me with yours. She nodded once sharp. Charlotte Grace helped me with the little ones. Sam stay with Mr. McAllister. I don't need Sam. The younger boy fell silent. Emmy gathered the smaller children with the efficiency of someone who'd been mothering since before she should have had to, and disappeared into the back room. Sam stayed. His fists were still clenched. You any good in a fight? Silas asked. Good enough. You ever killed a man? Sam went pale. No, sir. Then stay behind me and don't do anything stupid. Silas pulled his rifle from above the mantel, checked the chamber, loaded. Outside, the hoofbeats stopped. Silas McAllister. The voice carried smooth over the wind, cultured, the kind of voice that practiced sounding reasonable. Silas opened the door and stepped onto the porch, pulling it closed behind him. The cold hit like a fist. 2 riders sat their horses in the snow. The first was a thin man in a black duster, his face narrow and calculating. Even in torchlight, Silas could see the silver belt buckle at his waist, a bull's head with curved horns. The second rider wore a star. Sheriff Cole, Silas said. Bit late for a social call. Henry Cole looked uncomfortable. His horse shifted under him. Silas, Mr. Blackwood here says his wards ran off. 9 children. Says they might have come this way. They're inside, Silas said. Cornelius Blackwood smiled. Up close, he had the look of a man who counted things. Land parcels, timber board feet, the exact worth of other people's pain. I'm relieved to hear it. I've been half mad with worry. He reached into his coat and pulled out a folded document. I have guardianship papers right here. Legal and proper, signed by Judge Whitmore himself. I'm sure you understand a man in my position, widower, no children of my own, taking on 9 orphans is quite the burden. But family is family. Show me the papers, Sheriff Cole said. Blackwood handed them over. Cole read by torchlight, his lips moving slightly. Looks legitimate, Cole said slowly. Silas, I'm sorry, but if the papers are legal, let me see the children first. Silas didn't move from the doorway. Let me hear them say they want to go back. Blackwood's smile thinned. They're children. They don't know what they want. They've been coddled, spoiled by parents who didn't understand that discipline builds character. He gestured at the cabin. I'm sure they've told you stories. Children do that when they don't want to face consequences. The oldest girl says you killed her parents. Sheriff Cole's head snapped up. What? That's absurd. Blackwood's voice stayed smooth, but something flickered behind his eyes. A tragic accident, nothing more. The grief has affected their judgment. She says the wheel bolts were filed. Silence. The wind howled between them. I investigated that accident, Cole said carefully. Found nothing suspicious. Did you check the bolts? Cole hesitated. That hesitation said everything. The children are traumatized, Blackwood said harder now. They need stability, structure, a firm hand, not some... His gaze swept over Silas's cabin, the forge, the isolation. Some hermit who hasn't spoken to the town in years. I've spoken when I had something to say. And what do you have to say now that you're keeping my wards against their will, against the law? Blackwood leaned forward in his saddle. That's kidnapping Mr. McAllister, a hanging offense in this territory. The door behind Silas opened. He didn't turn, but he heard Emmy's voice sharp and clear. I'd rather hang than go back to him. She stepped onto the porch beside Silas. In the torchlight, the bruises on her face stood out stark purple, fading to yellow down her jaw, one eye still swollen enough to affect her vision. Sheriff Cole sucked in a breath. Dear God. Discipline, Blackwood said flatly. She was caught stealing food. I was feeding Ruth. She hadn't eaten in 2 days because you said babies don't earn their keep. Children exaggerate. Then explain these. Emmy turned her back and pulled down the collar of her dress. Even in the dim light, the marks were clear. Belt marks, yes, but also something else. The outline of a buckle stamped into her skin, a bull's head with horns. Silas looked at Blackwood's belt, at the silver buckle gleaming at his waist. That's the pattern, Emmy said. Plain as day. You want me to show you the same marks on Abby? She's 6. You want to see what he did to a 6-year-old for crying? She's lying, Blackwood said, but his voice had lost its smoothness. Or confused. Grief does strange things to Cornelius. Sheriff Cole's voice was quiet. I've known you 6 months. I've known the Holloway family for 15 years. William and Sarah were good people. I'm not saying they weren't. I'm saying I'd like to see those children, all 9 of them, now. Blackwood's hand moved toward his coat. Silas raised his rifle. Don't. The moment stretched. Torchlight flickered. Somewhere behind Silas inside the cabin, a child was crying. Sheriff? Blackwood's voice was ice. You're going to let this man threaten me. I'm going to let this man protect 9 children while I figure out what's true. Cole dismounted slowly. You'll come to my office tomorrow, Cornelius. Bring your papers. We'll sort this out proper. The papers are legal. I have rights. And those children have bruises that match your belt buckle. Cole stepped toward the porch. Emmy, go inside. Keep your brothers and sisters warm. I'll make sure Mr. Blackwood leaves peacefully. Emmy didn't move. He'll come back. He always comes back. Not tonight. Cole turned to Blackwood. Tomorrow. My office. Noon. Blackwood sat rigid in his saddle. The mask of civility had cracked, and underneath was something cold, something patient. 10 days, he said softly. What? Territorial law gives a guardian 10 days to recover runaway wards before property rights transfer. His eyes fixed on Silas. You have 10 days to return my nieces and nephews. After that, their inheritance, both homesteads, all 280 acres, reverts to me as conservator. He smiled. And you, Mr. McAllister, will face charges of kidnapping, custodial interference, and harboring fugitives. The penalty is 5 years in prison and forfeiture of all property. He gathered his reins. Enjoy your evening with them. It won't last. He wheeled his horse and rode into the darkness. Sheriff Cole watched him go. His shoulders sagged. Silas, I'm sorry. The papers look legal, until I can prove otherwise. You believe her? Cole looked at Emmy, at the bruises on her face, at the way she stood ready to throw herself between danger and the cabin door. I believe something's wrong, but believing isn't proof. He mounted his horse. 10 days. Use them. He rode away, following Blackwood's trail. Emmy stayed on the porch until the torchlight disappeared completely. He won't wait 10 days, she said. He'll come back with more men, with guns. Maybe. You should send us away. There's a missionary school in Helena. They take orphans. Silas looked at her. 14 years old, carrying 8 younger children through a blizzard to a stranger's door because she had nowhere else to go. When I pulled your daddy from that mine, he said, he told me something. Said if anything ever happened to him and Sarah, there was only one man in Montana he'd trust with his children. Emmy's breath caught. He wrote it in his will, filed it with the church. Silas didn't know if that was true, but he'd find out tomorrow. Your daddy didn't want Cornelius anywhere near you. That's why Cornelius had to move so fast. You're saying, I'm saying you didn't come to a stranger's door tonight. Your daddy sent you here. He opened the cabin door. Now get inside before you freeze. We've got 9 mouths to feed and 10 days to figure out how to keep you alive. Emmy stood frozen. For the first time since she'd collapsed on his porch, she looked like a child instead of a soldier. Why? She whispered. You don't know us. You don't owe us anything. Why would you risk everything for... Because your daddy saved my life once. In the mine, you saved him. Different time. Silas didn't elaborate. Some debts couldn't be explained in words. Inside, now, she went. The back room was chaos. 9 children ranging from 14 to 3 crowded onto a bed built for one. The toddler Ruth had stopped crying, which meant she was either asleep or too exhausted to make sound. The 6-year-old Abby was sobbing quietly into Emmy's pillow. Sam stood guard by the window, though there was nothing to see but darkness. He's gone, he asked. For now. He'll be back. I know. The 11-year-old Charlotte, he remembered, was systematically checking the younger children. She'd taken off Ruth's flour sack wrapping and was examining the toddler's fingers and toes for frostbite. 2 of Ruth's toes are bad, she reported without looking up. Black at the tips. Rosie's fingers are okay, just numb. Jake won't let me check him. The 7-year-old boy Jake sat in the corner, his knees drawn up to his chest. He hadn't made a sound since entering the cabin. He doesn't talk, Charlotte said quietly. Not since the accident. Not one word. Silas knelt down to Jake's level. The boy flinched, but didn't run. Jake, I'm not going to hurt you. I'm going to keep you safe. He kept his voice low, steady. Can you show me your hands? Jake looked at him with eyes that had seen too much. Slowly, he extended his hands. The fingertips were pale, but not black. He'd make it. Good boy. Silas stood. Charlotte, you have medical experience. My mama was the closest thing to a doctor in Pine Ridge. I helped her. Charlotte's voice was flat. Before. I need you to check everyone. Fingers, toes, ears. Anyone with black skin, tell me immediately. She nodded and went to work. Emmy appeared in the doorway. They're asking for food. Kitchen's through there. Beans, bacon, bread. Coffee on the stove. Is there enough? Silas looked at 9 hungry faces. He'd been planning to ride into town for supplies next week. There's enough for tonight. Tomorrow we'll figure out the rest. Emmy hesitated. Mr. McAllister. Silas. Silas, she swallowed. Thank you. For believing us. Most people don't. Most people haven't seen the marks on a 6-year-old's back. Her face tightened. Abby got it worst. She cries and crying made Cornelius angry. He said he was teaching her to be strong. Only cowards beat children. That's what my daddy used to say. Emmy's eyes were bright with tears she wouldn't let fall. He used to say real strength is knowing you can hurt someone and choosing not to. Your daddy was a wise man. He was the best man I ever knew. She wiped her eyes with her sleeve. Until tonight. She disappeared into the kitchen. Silas stood in the doorway between the 2 rooms, watching 9 children slowly unclench. The little ones were starting to talk again, their voices hushed but present. Sam had finally sat down, his guard dog posture relaxing by degrees. Even Jake in his corner was watching the activity with something other than fear. 3 days ago, they'd been prisoners in their own home. 2 hours ago, they'd been fleeing through a blizzard. Now they were here, safe at least for the moment. 10 days. He had 10 days to find proof that Cornelius Blackwood had murdered their parents. 10 days to find a legal standing that would let him keep these children. 10 days before the law turned against them all. Silas looked at the forge coals still glowing in the main room. At the horseshoe he'd been shaping when the knock came. Unfinished business. Good things can't be rushed, he thought. But they're worth fighting for. He rolled up his sleeves and went to help Emmy with the beans. Midnight passed. 1 o'clock. 2. The children slept in piles, too exhausted to care about crowding. Emmy had tried to stay awake standing guard, but Silas had ordered her to bed and she'd dropped like a stone. He sat by the window rifle across his knees, watching the darkness. The snow had stopped falling. The wind had died. In the stillness he could hear the children breathing, 9 small bodies rising and falling in sleep. He hadn't heard that sound in 7 years. Martha's breathing had been loud near the end, labored with the effort of bringing their daughter into the world. He'd held her hand while the doctor worked, praying to a God he wasn't sure he believed in. The baby had come out blue and silent. Martha had lasted 3 hours longer. He'd buried them together in the spring when the ground finally thawed. Hadn't attended church since. Hadn't spoken to neighbors unless necessary. Had built his world small and quiet, safe from any more loss. Now 9 children were sleeping in his cabin, and a man with murder in his heart had 10 days to take them away. Silas looked at his hands. Big, scarred, calloused. Hands that had pulled a man from a collapsing mine. Hands that had failed to save his wife and child. Could they save these 9? He didn't know, but he was going to try. The first thin light of dawn crept through the window when he heard movement. Not from the bedroom, from outside. Hoofbeats still distant, but coming closer. Silas was on his feet before the sound registered fully. He checked the rifle, moved to the door, listened. 1 horse, moving fast. He eased the door open. A rider came into view through the trees. Small, riding hard, dressed in a man's coat that was too big for her. As she got closer, Silas recognized her. Clara Whitfield, the widow who ran the general store in town. She reined up hard in front of the cabin, her horse blowing clouds of steam. Mr. McAllister. She was breathing almost as hard as the horse. The children, are they here? Inside. Thank God. She dismounted in a rush. I came as soon as I heard. Reverend Stone sent word last night. She stopped, seeing something in his face. What happened? Blackwood was here, with the sheriff. And Cole gave me 10 days. After that, the children go back or I go to prison. Clara's face hardened. That man killed my husband. Silas went still. What? 3 years ago. Mine accident. They called it an accident. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. But I found the same thing Emmy's talking about. equipment that had been tampered with. Cornelius Blackwood bought Marcus's claim 2 weeks after the funeral. Same pattern, same timing. You have proof. Nothing that would hold up in court. Cornelius is careful. She pulled a bundle from her saddlebag. But I brought supplies. Food for the children, bandages, medicine. You rode through the night to bring supplies. I rode through the night because those children deserve someone fighting for them. Clara met his eyes. And because when my husband died, the whole town looked the other way. I won't do that to another family. From inside, Silas heard Emmy's voice, sharp with alarm. Mr. McAllister. It's all right, he called. A friend. Emmy appeared in the doorway, a kitchen knife in her hand. She was ready to fight, ready to protect her family even against impossible odds. Clara Whitfield looked at the girl 14 years old, bruised, armed, unbroken, and something in her face shifted. Well, Clara said softly, aren't you exactly what I would have been at your age? Who are you? Someone who knows what Cornelius Blackwood really is. Clara stepped onto the porch. And someone who's been waiting 3 years to see him pay for it. Emmy lowered the knife slowly. You believe us. Sweetheart, I more than believe you. I've been gathering evidence since the day my husband died. Clara pulled a leather folder from inside her coat. And I think it's finally time to use it. Silas looked at the folder, at Clara's determined face, at Emmy's desperate hope. 9 children, 10 days, 1 chance. The sun broke over the mountains, painting the snow gold. Come inside, Silas said. We've got work to do. The folder contained 3 years of patience. Clara spread the documents across Silas's kitchen table while the children ate. 9 bowls of beans and bacon, 9 cups of warm milk she'd brought from town. The little ones ate like they'd forgotten food existed. Ruth, the 3-year-old, had to be fed by hand. She'd forgotten how to hold a spoon. This is everything I've collected since Marcus died. Clara tapped a stack of papers. Land transfers, death certificates, witness statements from people who later left town or went silent. Silas studied the documents. 5 families, 5 accidents, 5 properties that ended up in Cornelius Blackwood's hands within weeks of each death. The McCready Ranch, barn fire, 1879. Henry McCready died trying to save his horses. Clara's voice was flat. His widow sold the land to Cornelius for 1/3 of its value because she couldn't afford to rebuild. The Chen homestead, rockslide 1880. Killed both parents, left 2 children. Cornelius took guardianship, sent the children to an orphanage in California, kept the land. The Whitfield claim, my husband's mine. Cave-in, 1881. Equipment failure. She paused. Marcus was the most careful man I ever knew. He checked those support beams every morning. Emmy had stopped eating. She was listening. And the Holloway and Patterson families, Clara finished. Wagon accident, September 1884. Wheel came off on flat ground. That's 5 families, Silas said, all on properties along the same stretch of land. The Northern Pacific Rail Survey Line. Clara pulled out a map, hand-drawn but detailed. Every single property sits on the proposed right-of-way. The railroad's been buying easements for 2 years now, paying good money, $8,000–$10,000 for the right to lay track across a man's land. Emmy stood up so fast her chair scraped against the floor. That's why he wanted us dead, not just the land, the railroad money. Combined your family's homestead and the Patterson claim cover 1,280 acres of prime root. Clara looked at the girl. Worth maybe $20,000 to the right buyer. More if he controls the timber rights. Sam slammed his fist on the table. The younger children flinched. He murdered our parents for money. Sam's voice shook. And the law's just gonna let him take us back. The law doesn't know what we know. Silas picked up one of the documents, a death certificate for Henry McCready. But we're going to tell them. Who's going to listen? Emmy asked. Sheriff Cole saw my bruises last night and still said the papers looked legal. Sheriff Cole is a good man in a bad position. Clara gathered the documents carefully. But there's someone else. Someone Cornelius can't buy or intimidate. Who? Reverend Elijah Stone. Clara tucked the folder back into her coat. He's been keeping records at the church for 40 years. Baptisms, marriages, deaths, and wills. If your father filed anything with the church instead of the county, Reverend Stone would know. Silas remembered what he'd told Emmy last night, that her father had written a will naming him as guardian. He'd said it without knowing if it was true. A gamble based on a dying man's words in a flooded mineshaft. Time to find out if that gamble would pay off. "I'll ride to town," he said. "Talk to the Reverend." "I'm coming with you." Emmy's chin lifted. "He's my father's will. I should be there." "Too dangerous. Blackwood's men will be watching." "Then let them watch. I'm not hiding in a cabin while other people fight for my family." Charlotte spoke up from the corner where she'd been checking Ruth's toes. "Emmy's right. If there's a will, she should be the one to claim it. She's the oldest Holloway." "And I should go too," Sam added. "Someone needs to protect her." "You're 12. I'm old enough to swing a hammer. Old enough to shoot if I have to." Silas looked at this boy. 12 years old, trying to be a man because someone had to be. He'd been the same age when his own father died. "You stay here. Protect the young ones." "But that's not a request." Silas's voice left no room for argument. "Charlotte, you're in charge of medical. Grace, you help her. Tommy, keep the little ones calm. Jake—" He paused, looking at the silent boy in the corner. "Jake, you watch the windows. You see anyone coming, you find Charlotte immediately." Jake nodded once. First response he'd given since arriving. "What about me?" The voice came from Abby, the 6-year-old. She'd stopped eating, her eyes wide and frightened. "What do I do?" Silas knelt down to her level. Up close, he could see the fear that lived behind her eyes. The kind of fear that came from being hurt by someone who was supposed to protect you. "You have the most important job of all," he said gently. "You take care of Rosie and Ruth. They need someone brave to look after them. Can you do that?" Abby's lower lip trembled. "I'm not brave. I cry too much. Uncle Cornelius said—" "Your uncle was wrong about a lot of things." Silas put his hand on her shoulder, light enough that she could pull away if she wanted. She didn't. "Crying doesn't mean you're not brave. It means you feel things. That's a gift, not a weakness." "Really? Really? The bravest people I ever knew cried plenty. They just didn't let it stop them from doing what needed doing." Abby wiped her nose with her sleeve. "Okay, I'll take care of the babies." "That's my girl." He stood. Emmy was watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "What?" he asked. "Nothing. Just, my daddy used to talk to us like that, like we mattered." "You do matter." "Not to most people." "Then most people are fools." Silas pulled on his coat. "Clara, you're with me and Emmy. We'll take the back trail, come into town from the north, less likely to be seen. And if we are seen, then we deal with it." Clara smiled grimly. "I've been waiting 3 years to deal with Cornelius Blackwood." "You might get your chance." Silas checked his rifle one more time. "Sam, bar the door behind us. Don't open it for anyone except me, Clara, or Reverend Stone. Anyone else comes, you take the children out the back and head for the creek. Follow it north until you hit the Miller farm. Tell them I sent you." Sam straightened. "Yes, sir." "Good man." They left as the sun climbed higher, 3 figures on horseback, cutting through snow that glittered like broken glass. Behind them, Sam dropped the bar into place and turned to face 8 frightened faces. "You heard him," Sam said. "We've got a job to do." The ride to town took 2 hours. They kept to the tree line, avoiding the main road where Blackwood's men might be watching. Clara knew the back trails. She'd been using them for 3 years to move around without being seen. "Cornelius has eyes everywhere," she said as they rode. The telegraph operator, the hotel clerk, 2 of the deputies. Anyone who owes him money or wants to stay on his good side. "That's half the town," Emmy said. "More than half. When a man controls the land, he controls the people on it. Most folks in Pine Ridge rent from Cornelius, or work for someone who does." "Then why do you stay?" Clara was quiet for a moment. "Because my husband is buried here. Because running would mean letting Cornelius win." She glanced at Emmy. "And because I keep hoping someone else will show up who's angry enough to fight." They approached Pine Ridge from the north through a stand of pines that bordered the church property. The steeple rose against the gray sky, simple and plain. "Wait here," Silas said. "I'll check if it's clear." He dismounted and moved through the trees on foot. The church sat alone at the edge of town, separated from the main street by a small cemetery. Reverend Stone's cottage was attached to the back, smoke rising from its chimney. No horses tied outside. No movement in the windows. Silas whistled 2 short notes, 1 long. The signal he'd used in the war. Clara and Emmy emerged from the trees leading their horses. They tied the animals behind the cottage out of sight, and Silas knocked on the back door. It opened immediately. Reverend Elijah Stone was 70 if he was a day, but his eyes were sharp and his handshake was firm. He looked at Emmy, then at Silas, then at Clara. "I've been expecting you." He stepped back to let them in. "The whole town's been talking since last night. Cornelius is saying you kidnapped his wards." "They came to me," Silas said. "Beaten half to death running through a blizzard." "I know. I heard." Stone led them into a small sitting room lined with books. A fire crackled in the hearth. "Sit. We have much to discuss." Emmy remained standing. "My father. Did he file a will with you?" Stone studied her for a long moment. "You have your father's directness. He used to come straight to the point, too." "Did he file a will?" "Yes." The word hung in the air. 2 years ago." Stone continued. "He came to me after church one Sunday. Said he'd been worried about his brother. Said Cornelius had been asking questions about the property, about what would happen if anything happened to him and Sarah." "What kind of questions?" "The kind a man asks when he's planning something." Stone moved to a cabinet in the corner, unlocked it with a key from his pocket. William was scared, but he was also smart. He didn't trust the county clerk said there were rumors about records being altered, documents disappearing. So he filed his will with the church instead. He pulled out a folded document, old and creased, but intact. Last will and testament of William Holloway, dated March 1882. Stone handed it to Emmy. "Would you like to read it?" Emmy's hands trembled as she unfolded the paper. Her eyes moved across the words, and Silas watched her face change disbelief, then hope, then something fiercer. "It names you." She looked up at Silas. "My father named you as guardian, you and Clara Whitfield as alternates." "What?" Clara stepped forward. "Marcus and we were barely acquainted with the Holloways." "You were acquainted enough." Stone's voice was soft. "William respected your husband. Said Marcus was the only man in town who stood up to Cornelius when he tried to buy out the smaller claims. After Marcus died, William added your name to the will. Said if anything happened to him, his children would need a woman's influence." Clara's eyes filled with tears she didn't let fall. "I didn't know. William didn't want Cornelius to know. He was afraid of what his brother might do if he found out." Stone took the will back, handling it carefully. "This document supersedes any guardianship claim Cornelius filed. It was written 2 years before the accident, properly witnessed, properly sealed." "Then the children are safe," Emmy breathed. "Cornelius can't take them." "Not legally, but the law moves slowly, and Cornelius moves fast." Stone looked at Silas. "You have 10 days before the territorial deadline. We need to get this will to Sheriff Cole and make sure it's registered with the county before Cornelius can challenge it." He'll claim it's a forgery, Clara said. He can claim whatever he likes. I witnessed it myself alongside Marcus Whitfield and Judge Peterson. God rest them both. Stone's jaw tightened. Cornelius has killed 3 of the 4 witnesses to this will. I'm the only one left. The room went cold. You're saying he'll come for you, Silas said. I'm saying he already has. Twice in the past year, men have tried to break into my records room. Twice I found evidence of someone searching through my files. Stone moved to the window looking out at the churchyard. I've moved the will 3 times, kept it in different hiding places. Cornelius knows it exists, he just doesn't know where. How do you know he knows? Because he came to me himself, 6 months ago, offered me $500 to review the Holloway records, said he wanted to make sure everything was in order for his wards. You refused. I threw him out of my church. Stone's voice hardened. That man is a murderer, and everyone in this town knows it. They're just too afraid to say it out loud. Emmy had gone pale. If he knows the will exists, he'll destroy it. He'll burn this church down if he has to. That's why we're not leaving it here. Stone handed the document to Silas. Take it. Register it with Sheriff Cole today in front of witnesses. Make sure it becomes public record before Cornelius can make it disappear. Silas took the will, The paper felt impossibly light for something that held 9 lives in its words. Once this is registered, he said slowly, what happens? Legally, Cornelius loses his guardianship claim. The children become your responsibility, and their parents' estates passed to them with you as executor. Stone paused. But that won't stop him. He'll fight it in court. He'll claim fraud, forgery, anything to delay the process. And while he fights, those children are still in danger. Then we need more than a will. Clara stepped forward. We need to prove what he did. The murders, the land theft, all of it. Can you prove it? Clara pulled out her folder. I've got 3 years of evidence. Documentation of every accident. Statements from witnesses who were paid to stay quiet. Financial records showing Cornelius's land purchases matched perfectly with each death. Stone examined the documents, his face growing graver with each page. This is substantial, he said finally. But it's not proof, it's pattern. Pattern is enough for a grand jury. Not in this territory. Not when Cornelius has Judge Whitmore in his pocket. Stone set down the papers. You need a confession, or physical evidence. Something that ties him directly to at least one of the murders. The wagon bolt. Emmy's voice was steady. Sheriff Cole found it at the accident site. Said the threads were filed, not worn. If we can match the tool marks to Cornelius's equipment. Cornelius carries surveyor's tools, Clara said. The kind with unique threading patterns. If we could get our hands on them, you'd need a warrant. Stone shook his head. And Judge Whitmore won't issue one against his biggest patron. Then we get it another way. Silas folded the will carefully and tucked it inside his coat. We go to the territorial marshal, over Whitmore's head. That's 3 days' ride to the capital, maybe 4 in this weather. Then I leave today. You can't. Emmy grabbed his arm. The children need you. I need you. If you leave, if I stay, we lose. Silas looked at her at the fear and determination warring in her face. Cornelius has the local law. He has the judge. He has money and men and time. The only way we win is by bringing in authority he can't buy. But 10 days? I can make it to the capital and back in 8 if I push hard. That leaves 2 days margin. He turned to Clara. You stay with the children. You and Reverend Stone both. Between you and Sam, you can keep them safe until I return. And if you don't return, the question hung in the air. Then you take this will and you run. Silas pulled it back out, pressed it into Emmy's hands. Helena, Bozeman, California. Anywhere Cornelius can't reach. You start over. You raise your brothers and sisters. You live. Emmy's eyes filled with tears. I don't want to start over. I want my family. I want to stay. I know. and I'm going to fight like hell to make that happen." He put his hand on her shoulder. "But if I fail, you survive. That's not giving up, that's being smart. Your parents didn't die so you could die too. They died so you could live." She broke then. The 14-year-old soldier crumbled, and underneath was just a girl who'd lost everything and was terrified of losing more. Silas held her while she cried. Over her head, he met Clara's eyes. "Watch over them," he said, "with my life." Reverend Stone cleared his throat. "Before you go, there's one more thing you should know." Silas released Emmy gently. "What?" "Cornelius has been sending telegrams to the Capitol all week. I don't know what they say the operator is loyal to him, but he's been in that office every morning." Stone's face was troubled. "If he's communicating with the territorial government, he could be setting a trap. Or building a case against you. Kidnapping charges filed in advance. A warrant waiting when you arrive." Silas absorbed this. The path forward was narrowing options falling away like leaves in autumn. "Then I don't go to the government offices. I go to the territorial marshal directly. I know a man in Helena we served together in the war. He won't care about warrants or politics. He'll care about the truth." "You're gambling everything on one man's integrity." "I'm gambling everything on the only chance we've got." Silas pulled on his coat. "Clara, get word to Sheriff Cole. Tell him about the will. Make sure he sees it, witnesses it, records it in his own files. Even if Cornelius buys the county clerk, Cole's records will stand. And if Cole won't help, he will. He's a good man who's been looking the other way because looking forward was too hard. Give him a reason to look forward." Silas moved to the door, then stopped. Emmy had composed herself. She stood straight, the will clutched against her chest, her face wet but determined. "When you come back," she said, "we'll be here, all of us, alive. I'm counting on it." He walked out into the cold. The ride back to the cabin was faster alone. Silas pushed his horse hard, eating up the miles, running through plans and contingencies in his mind. If the territorial marshal listened, if he could get there and back in time, if Clara and Stone could protect the children, if. Too many ifs. But there was no other way. He was half a mile from the cabin when he saw the smoke, not chimney smoke. Too much, too black. He kicked his horse into a gallop, heart pounding against his ribs. The cabin came into view through the trees. The barn was on fire. Silas leaped from his horse before it fully stopped running toward the cabin. The door hung open. The bar splintered. Inside, Sam lay crumpled against the far wall, blood running from a gash on his forehead. Charlotte knelt over him, pressing a cloth to the wound. The younger children huddled in the corner, Ruth screaming, Abby sobbing, Tommy trying to hold them both. "What happened?" Silas dropped to his knees beside Sam. "Men came." Charlotte's voice was shaking but controlled. "3 of them. They didn't announce themselves, just kicked in the door. Sam tried to fight. They hit him with a rifle butt. The others, they took Grace and Jake." Charlotte's composure cracked. "They said to tell you they want to make a trade. The children for the will." Silas's blood went cold. "Who said?" "The leader. He had a message from Mr. Blackwood." Charlotte swallowed. "He said if you don't bring the will to the old mine by sundown tomorrow, you'll never see Grace and Jake again." Outside, the barn collapsed in a shower of sparks. Inside, Silas looked at 5 terrified children and made a decision. The will could save all 9. Or he could save 2 now and lose everything. His hands curled into fists. Cornelius Blackwood had made the first move. Time to make the last one. Sam's eyes fluttered open. Blood still seeped through the cloth Charlotte pressed against his forehead, but his gaze was focused. Angry. "I tried to stop them." His voice came out raw. "I swung at the first one through the door, got him good in the jaw, but then, you did what you could." Silas checked the wound. Deep, but not dangerous. The boy would have a scar, but he'd live. How many men? 3. Maybe 4. They came fast, didn't give us time to run. Sam struggled to sit up. Charlotte pushed him back down. Grace screamed when they grabbed her. Jake didn't make a sound, just went still like he does. Did you recognize any of them? The leader, tall man with a red beard, works at Cornelius's land office. Silas knew him. Hank Dawson, mean drunk, meaner sober, the kind of man who enjoyed hurting people smaller than himself. They said sundown tomorrow. Charlotte's hands were steady on the bandage, but her voice betrayed her fear. At the old Bannock mine. The same mine where Silas had pulled William Holloway from the rubble 5 years ago. Cornelius had a sick sense of poetry. They want the will, Silas said. They want you dead. Sam grabbed Silas's arm. It's a trap. You know it's a trap. You go to that mine, they'll kill you and take the will anyway. Probably. Then don't go. We'll find another way. They have Grace. They have Jake. Silas stood. There is no other way. Tommy stepped forward from the huddle of younger children, 8 years old, trying to be brave. Mr. Silas, is Grace gonna be okay? Silas looked at the boy, at Abby clutching Ruth, both of them crying, at Rosie, who for once wasn't smiling, at Charlotte holding her brother together with nothing but willpower. 5 children here, 2 children there, 9 lives hanging by a thread. I'm going to bring her back, Silas said. Her and Jake both. Promise. The word hit him like a fist. He'd promised Martha he'd keep her safe. Promised their daughter a life she never got to live. Promises were dangerous things. But Tommy was looking at him with eyes that needed to believe in something. I promise. The sound of hoofbeats outside made everyone freeze. Silas grabbed his rifle, moved to the shattered door. Through the smoke from the still-burning barn, he saw 2 riders approaching, Clara Whitfield and Sheriff Cole. They reined up hard, Clara's face going white when she saw the destruction. Cole dismounted before his horse fully stopped, hand on his pistol. What happened here? Blackwood's men. Silas lowered the rifle. They took 2 of the children. Took them where? Old Bannock Mine. Sundown tomorrow. They want to trade for the will. Cole's jaw tightened. That's kidnapping. I can arrest... Arrest who? You got 3 deputies, and 2 of them are on Cornelius's payroll. By the time you gather a posse, Grace and Jake will be dead. Then what do you suggest? Silas met his eyes. I suggest you do your job while I do mine. Meaning, you take Clara and these children to the church. Reverend Stone will protect them. Register the will, officially make it part of the public record. Whatever happens to me, that will stands. And you, I go to the mine. Alone against at least 3 armed men. You got a better idea? Cole was silent. They both knew he didn't. Clara dismounted and pushed past both men into the cabin. She knelt beside Sam, checked his wound, then looked at Charlotte. You did good keeping pressure on it. He'll be fine. I know. Charlotte's voice cracked. But Grace, Jake. Silas will get them back. How do you know? Clara looked at Silas, still standing in the doorway with smoke swirling around him. Because he's the kind of man who keeps his promises, even the impossible ones. Silas turned away from her faith in him. He wasn't sure he deserved it. We need to move, he said. Cornelius will send more men when these don't report back. The children can't stay here. The church is defensible, Cole said. Stone's got a root cellar thick walls. I can station my 1 honest deputy there. Do it. The next hour was controlled chaos. They loaded the children onto horses Sam insisted on riding. Despite his wound, Charlotte kept Ruth bundled against her chest. Tommy held on to Abby, while Rosie clung to Clara's waist. The cabin was lost. The barn a pile of embers, but the children were alive. That was what mattered. At the edge of the property, Emmy appeared on horseback, riding hard from the direction of town. She'd heard about the attack somehow. News traveled fast in Pine Ridge. I came as soon as... She saw the cabin, the barn, Sam's bandaged head. Her face went gray. No, 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 no. Grace and Jake, Charlotte said. They took them. Emmy wheeled her horse toward Silas. Where? Bannock Mine, tomorrow sundown. I'm coming with you. No. They're my brother and sister, my responsibility. I'm coming. You're staying with the others. Silas kept his voice flat. Someone has to lead this family if I don't come back. Don't say that. It's true. You're the oldest. You're the strongest. They need you more than they need me. Emmy's eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. I can't lose anyone else. I can't. You won't. He reached out, squeezed her shoulder. But if something goes wrong, you keep going. You take these children and you run. You build a new life somewhere Cornelius can't touch. That's not giving up, that's surviving. How can you ask me to? Because your father asked me to protect you. And protecting you means making sure you're alive tomorrow, no matter what. She stared at him for a long moment. Then she nodded just once. Bring them back. I will. The group moved out toward town, a ragged caravan of horses and children, and desperate hope. Silas watched them go until they disappeared into the trees. Then he turned toward the mountains. He had until sundown tomorrow. That gave him roughly 20 hours to plan, prepare, and somehow pull 2 children from the grip of men who wanted him dead. The odds weren't good. But they never had been. The old Bannock Mine sat in a hollow between 2 ridges accessible only by a narrow trail that wound through pine forest and shale slides. Silas knew the terrain. He'd worked that mine briefly before. Turning to blacksmithing, knew its tunnels and shafts, and the way sound echoed off the rock walls. He also knew it was a death trap. One way in, one way out. A man with a rifle could hold that trail against an army, which meant he couldn't use the trail. He spent the ride calculating angles, remembering the layout. There was another way into the mine, an old ventilation shaft on the ridge above, barely wide enough for a man to squeeze through. He'd used it once during the collapse to reach William Holloway when the main entrance was blocked. If it was still open. If Cornelius didn't know about it. If. But it was the only chance he had. He made camp that night in a hollow 2 miles from the mine. No fire, no light. The cold seeped through his coat into his bones. He thought about Martha, about the baby girl he'd held for 1 hour before she stopped breathing. He'd been helpless then, unable to save them despite everything he'd tried. He wouldn't be helpless now. At first light, he climbed the ridge. The snow was deep here, untouched by human passage. His breath came in white clouds as he struggled upward, boots slipping on loose shale hidden beneath the powder. The ventilation shaft was where he remembered it, a dark opening in the rock face partially blocked by a fallen pine. He spent an hour moving the debris, working quietly, listening for any sound from below. Nothing. Either they hadn't posted guards this far up, or they were confident no one knew about this entrance. Silas squeezed into the shaft. The darkness was absolute. He moved by memory and touch, one hand on the rough stone wall, the other clutching his rifle. The shaft angled downward, twisting twice before opening into a larger passage. He could hear voices now, distant, echoing.